after the panel. Next, we have Elizabeth Fawthrop, who's a senior at the University of Washington in political science. She is a founding member of the Campus Anti-War Network chapter at UW.
That didn't work out the way I wanted. So thank you so much for having me. I am so honored to be on this incredible panel of just amazing left-wing fighters. And I didn't think of myself as quite this big, but I guess I'll have to readjust. So my name is Elizabeth Fawthrop, and I'm a member of the University of Washington chapter of the Campus Anti-War Network. And I joined CAN. I founded the Campus Anti-War Network chapter with two other amazing activists who are back here in the back because I know that students have the power to stop wars. During the Vietnam War, ordinary Vietnamese defended their country against illegal war. Soldiers put down their guns and refused to fight, and students shut down universities and refused to be part of the U.S. war machine. These are three elements that help stop the U.S. war in Vietnam, and the same three elements can help us stop the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan today. Despite the media's consensus on the success of the surge, a majority of Americans oppose the war, and 40% of them reject the surge altogether. With 5 years of war in Iraq and 7 years of war in Afghanistan, we should ask ourselves why the movement isn't bigger. We're told that protest doesn't work and that politicians are the only people that can change things. But the Democrats have been in control of Congress for 2 years and refuse to even so much as filibuster a vote on the war budget. This is ludicrous. Meanwhile, Barack Obama has campaigned for change in Iraq and an end to the war in Iraq, but wants to escalate the war in Afghanistan. These are not people who've proven their trustworthiness, and we should reject their trust. We should reject their lies and reject their promises. But anti-war movement built outside of the confines of the Democratic Party, outside of the limitations of the Democratic Party, has proven itself before and will prove itself again. One of the other reasons the movement isn't bigger is that we haven't won anything since Vietnam. We are politically and organizationally weaker now than we were in the 1960s. The Vietnam War movement was led by people who first got their feet wet in the civil rights movement. Student activism first began in the struggle against Jim Crow segregation in the South. In the South, students were challenging separate but equal laws by integrating schools in Little Rock and sitting in at lunch counters in North Carolina. In the North, students founded the Committee for Racial Equality and the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee to organize against de facto segregation that kept blacks in the worst schools, worst neighborhoods, and in the worst jobs. With the lessons of the civil rights movement in close memory and a whole new layer of activists trained, the anti-war movement got its start after the aerial bombing of Vietnam in 1965. In March of 1965, 30 teachers at the University of Michigan organized a teach-in. 3,000 students came out and debated until 8 o'clock in the morning. Throughout the spring of 1965, there were teach-ins at over 100 campuses. At UC Berkeley, a teach-in lasted 36 hours with a total of 36,000 students. These teach-ins scared the government so much that they were forced to establish a truth team that toured the country attempting to justify the war. They were debated by anti-war protesters at every stop and resoundingly defeated each time. These politics turned into action in 1968 at Columbia University in New York. Thousands of students went on strike, shut down the university, and kicked the ROTC off campus, beginning a 4-decade ban on the ROTC at Columbia University. When Nixon announced the invasion of Cambodia in 1970, students protested all across the country. 2,000 students at Kent State protested and burned down the ROTC building. The National Guard was sent in to restore order, firing into the crowd and killing 4 students. The response to killing at home was overwhelming and angry. 4,350,000 students protested at 1,350 colleges. 536 colleges went on strike, and Governor Ronald Reagan had to shut down the entire university system in California. Yeah. Here in Seattle, UW students were the first in the country to start a GI Civilian Alliance. The GI Civilian Alliance for Peace. GI CAP was led by both active duty GIs and students on campus. Students and GIs would leaflet together on base and they led an aquatic invasion of Fort Lewis to protest the war and encourage solidarity among anti-war GIs. This is the kind of movement that I want to see, and building CAN is part of that. CAN is a national, grassroots, and democratic organization of nearly 40 chapters across the country. CAN is actually an organizational step forward from the Vietnam era. During Vietnam, there was no coherent, organized national student anti-war group that organized against the war from the beginning to the end. CAN is that place. CAN is a place for debate and discussion, but also a place for organizing and action. Recently, CAN held their 6th national conference, where they voted to have national working groups to centralize different campaigns. Campaigns on Afghanistan, campaigns on campus complicity, working with Palestinian rights groups, and working with Iraq against the war. CAN also has a focus on building strong active bases on campuses and working closely with Iraq vets, both on campus and off. CAN is also building ties with students across the world. Currently, tens of thousands of students are on strike in Spain and Italy to protest the privatization of the academic systems in their countries. In Spain, students have called for a national day of action on November 13th. Coincidentally, the same day that CAN has called for a day of action around Afghanistan here in the U.S. The Spanish students have endorsed our action, and we're building ties with those students in an attempt to build a truly international anti-war movement. In Seattle, we're working with IBAW and helping them build Coffee Strong, the second anti-war GI coffee house in the U.S. since Vietnam, which actually just opened on Friday. Outside of Fort Lewis, and they're hosting an amazing concert with Son of None next weekend. The University of Washington, in less exciting news, has accepted the CIA onto campus in a CIA-sponsored program called the Institute for National Security Education Research. Christy just named it is. The program pays for students to study abroad, particularly in Asian countries, but where students write a detailed research paper. The research paper is supposed to cover everything from home and social life to the political makeup and scientific and technological prowess of the countries they're staying in. This data collected from the study abroad program is being used in national intelligence reports and to project American power across the world. The university wants to keep this program a secret. We're not going to let them. The American Association of University Professors at the UW has issued a petition for more information and increased clarity around the program. CAN and other student groups are planning a petition campaign that we can hope register student discontent with the war and raise questions about the university's role in propagating the war. If you're a student at the UW, I urge you to get involved with CAN. If your school doesn't have an anti-war group yet, start one, and then get in touch with the Campus Anti-War Network. This war will only end when students shut down universities, workers shut down production, and soldiers refuse to fight. We can build the kind of movement that we want, and it absolutely has to start now.